Would you say that you would kind of identify yourself as someone that is typically like mentally healthy, like emotionally healthy?
Yeah, I would say I have quite a level of emotional control. I think a lot of people perceive me as this really strong, positive, fun, kind of bubbly personality, I guess, that usually lifts a lot of people from dark places, when we come in contact. And I pride myself on being that person because it gives me joy to do that. But I go through life like everybody else, and I think that kind of drives me being able to be that person is that I've had so many different life experiences that have taken me to some dark places, and I found light to come out of them. And so I like to motivate people to do the same.
So can you kind of share maybe one of those experiences that you feel like you've gotten out of?
Dark place. I would say probably the darkest place that I've been is when someone who I was with at the time, like dating, attempted suicide in my presence. When you have somebody who gets so close to death and you also see it, like you see it happen, it's traumatizing. And I know people have different traumas and different situations that they've gone through in life, but for me, that was probably the most eye-opening moment in terms of seeing somebody who was hurting so bad, so close to you, and not even being aware or able to do anything about it. And what happened was we had been together for years at the time, and it was just one really bad night, and we were driving back from a friend's birthday party. We were both in the back seat, and I had fallen asleep. There was an argument and a whole situation that came of it that I didn't realize that there was something different happening in that moment. You have disagreements and arguments when you're in a relationship, but this time it was very different. And I think everybody who was a part of this situation recognized that it was something out of the ordinary. And when you don't really understand mental health issues to that extent, you kind of expect people to just kind of snap out of it. You want somebody to just get yourself together. Like, why are you you try to do this, like, why are you acting like this thing? And in that moment, that's kind of what I felt. It was kind of like, why are you acting like, it was so spur of the moment, so intense in that moment. And so I got to the point where I just, I don't like confrontation. I really prefer for it not to happen. And so I went to sleep in the car. I went ahead and laid over and went to sleep. And next thing you know, I hear the door open. We're on the highway, and I look back, and the person I was dating at the time was on the ground rolling. And the person driving slammed on the brakes. I sprinted down the highway to pick her up, and her head was busted, elbow, we're calling 911. It's this whole situation, and then I'm calling family, and we're trying to figure out if she's gonna live, and it's this whole scene, like it's this whole thing. But I think the biggest trauma came after, because once something like that happens, like that was the first time that I felt like I couldn't even pull myself out of bed the next day. Like it was, I don't think people with mental health issues or that attempt suicide or do commit suicide realize the impact that it has on everybody who genuinely loves you, because they're so far down the path of thinking that their life doesn't matter or that they don't want to exist anymore, that they're not even thinking about the people who surround themselves with them every day, the people who they talk to every day, their siblings, their cousins, their family, friends. All of those people, when you remove yourself from that, those are the people that hurt. And so the attempt in and of itself was painful, but then realizing that there was so much more work to do to make sure that this never happened again, it was almost unbearable. And at the time I was still in school and I was working, and it was at a point where I had to really pull it together. It was like, okay, Chanel, you have time to cry and moan and be sad and try to figure out what to do or how to help for a minute, but life continues to go for you. And life may have stopped at that moment for that person because they have to take time to physically heal, like lay in a hospital bed for weeks or lay at home for weeks and get over all of the trauma that their body went through. But to have to push through that and go through life and still smile at people or still do your job and act like it's nothing going on, it was extremely traumatic for me. It was the darkest place. And I found myself really leaning to my friends. My friends were there like nonstop. You know, people came by the house to visit me that knew what was going on at the time. I prayed a lot about where my life was and what my purpose was and why I even was in this situation, because it felt as detrimental to me. I can't say it felt as detrimental to me as her, because I don't really know how detrimental that felt to her. I can imagine. But I can say that it hit me as if I jumped out the car and hit the highway. And it was just so many other things that followed that are just, I mean, it took years to heal from. But that push through, whenever you get there is unbelievable, because you have that zeal and that power to help motivate people when you see them in dark places. I think I was probably the perfect person to go through that because I took the positive. It's a lot of people who focus on the negative of things that they go through. They're stuck in a dump, or the recovery time is just really, really slow, or they hold on to things for years at a time. It took a lot of time to heal from that, but it also fueled me to be a better person and to recognize when I see a situation that's not a typical situation, or to know how to talk to somebody in that moment, or deal with people who have mental health issues before they even are diagnosed. Sometimes it's not always that we need to go see a psychologist to understand, like, there's emotional trauma that somebody is going through, and it may not look the same every day. And I think that's what this situation gave me, was kind of an eye-opener on how I can even be that strong, positive, motivating person to people when I see them struggling, and it's very recognizable for me.
What advice do you have to people who maybe have a loved one that is struggling with suicidal thoughts or mental health issues?
If you have friends and family that are struggling with mental health issues, I think it's important to listen, and listen, not to respond. And I was really bad at this. When I thought back on our relationship prior to this incident happening, I remember always listening for a solution. It was like, when she would tell me about a problem, I'd be like, okay, how can we fix it? Not just, why do you feel this way, or, what are you going through? Like, how does that make you feel? I didn't really do that. It was just like, you have this problem, I have this answer. And then that cuts out all of the person being able to just feel, and it rushes them to just be at the end of it. And that's not fair. So I would caution people to just listen. Like, just listen and try to understand, and maybe revisit it another time or another day. Because you don't know what kind of impact you're putting on somebody to take a person who has mental health issues from 0 to 100. It doesn't work that way. Everybody's minds don't really operate the same, so you have to be able to kind of meet them where they are and be a good listener, and also take yourself out of it and what you would do and what you feel and what you think or how you would react, because you really have to understand that everybody is very different and people go through different things different ways, and the battle is theirs. It's really not yours to fight, it's yours to support. But the battle is theirs to fight and yours to support. And what that support looks like, you have to listen to understand how they need you to support.
So what was the healing process like for both of y'all?
It was very interesting. So for the first, I want to say 2 months after the incident, we had very little communication. She just stayed really close to her family. I wanted to stay kind of out of this situation because I didn't know if our relationship were causing any of those emotional triggers. So I had to go through a healing process separately than the healing process that she went through. I'm happy now that she's healthy, she's healed, and she's like aware of her mental health and able to live through that. It's beautiful to see. She now has a daughter, and I am extremely grateful that she decided to live and she decided to fight, because there are a lot of people who give in to their demons and they don't make it through situations like that. And so I know that she, had gone to counseling and really depended on her family and found some things within herself to really get through. On the flip side of that, I did the same. I focused on the things that I enjoyed doing. I focused on the people who loved me. I focused on giving love instead of taking it. And I had to do that for quite some time because all I could think about was this situation for a really long time. But I think when you get to a point where you acknowledge when you diagnose the problem and you have solutions to fix it and resources to fix it, I think that's when everybody gets to heal. When everybody is aware and honest about how they're feeling and where they are. And I think that's the biggest point. But I would encourage anybody who is going through any type of mental health issues like suicidal thoughts, or if you have a family member that mentions that to you, definitely share resources that can help them. There's counselors, there's now textable counselors, there's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline that is completely confidential. It's not easy for people to tell people that they're thinking about doing something like that. And in this instance, it was so spur of the moment. I had no idea that it would get to that point. And there are signs that you can see along the way, when people are trying to cause hurt or damage to themselves, or they say certain things about themselves that you wouldn't say about yourself. You can kind of tell when somebody is not as confident in who they are or their being or their presence on this earth. And when you feel that, take it serious. Don't just sweep it under the rug or laugh it off or ignore it because you have your own life going on. Because one day you'll look up and there will be an extremely detrimental situation that you never expected. And that's a wrap.